Good morning, everyone. I'm the Honorable Mr. Nobuyuki Ide-san, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am very honored to Ide-san for inviting me to come to address this very important Asia Innovation Forum and to give my personal thoughts on a very important subject, world economy in 21st century, unknowns and prospects. Now, this is mission impossible because by definition, we cannot know an unknown unknown. I do not know what all of us do not know, and we cannot describe prospects, what we cannot know. But the future is dependent upon the past. And in 2010, I was very lucky that former ADB President Haruhiko Kuroda, today Governor of Bank of Japan, invited me to be part of the ADB team that produced the Asia 2050 study. Now, by 2050, the ADB estimate that Asia will have half of world GDP, income level same as Europe, urban population of 3 billion, and half of the middle class. And of course, Asia will also own half of world's financial assets. But this scenario is not preordained. And Kuroda-san has said this is very much dependent upon whether Asia can escape what he called the middle income trap. Now, the challenges of the middle income trap are huge. There is inequality of income and wealth. There are big governance problems. There is intense competition for natural resources. And there's climate warming, security, food, etc. Now, I want to tell this morning a story basically based upon the Japanese flying geese theory, which was evolved by the famous economist Kaname Akamatsu. And he saw Asian development as a V-shaped flying geese formation. Japan is the lead goose, first to move to advanced country status. We call this Asia 1.0. Then came the 4 dragons, which is Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, Asia 2.0. Now all 4 dragons have moved to advanced country status, income status. The third is, of course, the 4 tigers, Asia 3.0, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines. They are still in the middle income trap. And then there is China, Asia 4.0, followed closely by India and Indochina, still in the middle income trap. Now, how to get out of the middle income trap is the biggest challenge for Asia. And this is why I want to say innovation and technology will be a very important role. What is the middle income trap? The World Bank looked at the growth of middle-income countries and discovered since the 60s, only 13 countries have broken out of middle income into advanced country status, of which 6 of them are from Asia. As I said, Japan, and the 4 tigers, 4 dragons, including Israel. Now, how do we get out of this? The middle income trap is in fact what is called a collective action trap, because all of us cannot agree what is the right thing to do, what we can deal with. This is, for example, the same problem that we had Doha, Kyoto, climate change. Many examples are collective action trap. Now, there are 2 ways of dealing with the collective action trap. One is to have top-down, and the other one is bottom-up. So, some people say maybe we should have a world central bank, a world financial regulator, but this is politically very unlikely to happen. So the more interesting point is how do we build a bottom-up agreement to solve this? And the Nobel laureate Ronald Coase said we can bargain on this, but the bargaining is very slow, and very often the collective action trap results in inaction. We don't do nothing until the crisis changes us all. So what I really want to do now is to very quickly talk about the challenges of how to deal with middle income traps. And through this, we need how to deal with unknown unknowns. Now, the financial crisis was an unknown unknown. Nobody expected the black swan. And the risk manager, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who has invented the term black swan, and also recently the term anti-fragility, says that there is no way we can hedge against the black swan, the event that we don't know. All we can do is to invest in low-cost, high-return options which will give us sufficient capital to withstand shocks like tsunamis and all these negative black swan effects. And having this mindset, which I believe is a very original way of thinking about this, is very critical. Now, to quote Minsky, stability creates instability. Long period of stability creates instability. What Nassim Taleb suggests is that to allow small instability creates long-term stability. So we really need to design the global financial and regulatory architecture to absorb small instability, so in the long run we can take big shocks to the system as such. And this is the big lesson from the global financial crisis, which we will discuss with my good friend Shibata-san and others. Now, as you know, the global financial crisis was resolved through two major steps. One is quantitative easing to print more money, what I call print more debt to get out of the debt. And the second one is to have tighter regulation. Does this solve the problems? The answer is not quite. The reason is the whole world in the run-up of the last 30 years through financial innovation has become what I call long debt, short equity. The system has become very leveraged. So what the central banks have been trying to do is to increase the debt to solve the long debt problem rather than increasing the equity. And that is what we really need to do in Asia. Because if you really look at the commonality between the European problems and Asia is that we are basically bank dominated. What we really need to do is to move more towards capital market. We need to long equity. Long equity in two senses. First, inject capital to the leveraged companies, especially SMEs, to help finance trade financing, and long-term funding, pension and insurance funds, to help the long-term infrastructure, but also to improve social equity. That means the injustice in the system that currently exists needs to be resolved. How do we resolve this? There is only one way, in my opinion. You cannot solve a financial crisis only through finance. Finance must serve the real sector. You can only do this through structural reforms. And this is why if I can sort of use the Abenomics term, it is not just about the first arrow, the second arrow, the third arrow of structural reform is the most critical element to create the social justice and the structural importance of it all. There is, of course, a fourth arrow, which is macroprudential, but we will discuss this later. But what is facing Asia is really this. Asia has good luck and some not so good luck. The good news is that there are many young people growing, particularly in South Asia, in ASEAN. They are becoming very young, they are growing very fast. But large parts of Asia, North Asia, is aging. And we are now experimenting with this how to grow old gracefully and still, not to spend too much money on healthcare, etc. So there is a generation shift that is going on. And there are now 80 million millennials, people who are born between 1982 and 93, who will emerge into greater prosperity and the age of the internet. In fact, by 2020, 60% of all millennials will live in Asia with huge buying power. And they will basic change, a lot. So what is happening is that the millennials care more about technology than my generation, right? And it is, in my view, the only way for Asia to improve is to use technology and innovation for Asia to break out of the middle income trap. And that's why I'm a firm supporter of Ide-san's drive to go for Asian innovation. And this is the whole purpose of this forum. Technology is the real game changer. We were very successful in the 60s and 70s, but in recent years, I think elsewhere have been very successful. But we are now beginning to see this. We are now seeing Amazon, eBay's, Taobao's, all these Rakuten's, all these are coming, right? But there's technology in the production, but we need innovation in governance and sustainability. Now, let's talk a little bit about financial innovation, right? Paul Volcker was famous to say the only financial innovation is the ATM machine. But it is not true. Of course, that is a good innovation, but actually there are many things. Like, for example, today, if you think about the iPhone as, I'm not trying to make advertising for iPhone, but if you use the thumbprint to make digital signature, isn't this the same as the old way when we have pieces of paper and you either put your thumbprint or you put your seal mark? And this is just digitalization of behavior. So, technology can change many things. And in things like the Islamic finance would be the equivalent of trills because we need to share with people what happens when the whole country becomes prosperous. Now, this is where the technology and the governance merges. Recently, Michael Porter, who was famous for his idea of global competitiveness, and he and Mark Kramer put forward the concept of corporate shared value, CSV, right? How companies can now work together with government and civil society to make society better. For example, the Indian Companies Bill now mandates every large company to spend 2% of profits on corporate social responsibility activities. So we need to have greater sharing, and we need to have greater prosperity for all. Well, this comes back to a very fundamental problem in Asia. If Asia is to rise to fulfill the Asian century, we must have more regional cooperation. The theme of this Asian Innovation Forum about how Asia, working with ASEAN, China, Japan, and the rest of Asia for shared prosperity is absolutely the way to go. To sum up, we can no longer ignore the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is that a wave of a butterfly can signal a tornado the other side of the world. We need to manage this uncertainty. We can only manage this uncertainty if we all work together. We must approach our future with humility and tolerance, and no one is absolutely right or absolutely wrong. So to conclude, if we want to think about long-term sustainability, we must learn to work with each other and cooperate even as we compete. To go back to the vision of Akamatsu, a flock of flying geese must stick together, otherwise the flock will fail or fall. I want to end this by quoting the famous Japanese haiku master Basho. Now, in my youth, I liked poetry and I admired the haiku of Basho. And unfortunately, I don't know the Japanese version. Let me quote the English one, which says, "A flock of wild geese, their faint cries over the hill, vying with each other. May that vying be friendly and not a clash of civilizations." I want to thank Ide-san and the Asian Innovation Forum for inviting me to share my thoughts on a very important topic for us all. Thank you very much indeed.